The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Hello, everyone. Put away your lunches, find your seats, because the bell has rung, and with me, as always, is Professor Caro.
Professor Caro, hi. It's been a while. It's like a little over a month. So much for doing these monthly, but it's
I know
okay.
we really slack on that. We got to get better at playing these out.
I know, but this is perfect. Like it's coming out like Halloween week, and we have Halloween stuff to talk about.
Yes, it is perfect timing, and you know. School's in session, but we're not like your crabby, like 75-year-old English teacher you had that everyone hated. We're more like the cool substitutes that come in, just show up maybe once a month for one class and get everyone excited. So that's what we're here to do.
Right.
As always, format of the show, we cover 3 periods here. History, which is the making of, science, the mechanics of, and of course the free period, which is fun, facts, and all that other kind of stuff, and personal experiences. Tonight's topic, because as you mentioned, we're getting close to Halloween. It is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Caro, what is Zombies Ate My Neighbors?
It's a fun little game on the Super Nintendo, and I actually played this when I was, growing up. Not when it came out. It came out in 1993. It's a kind of run and gun video game, so you run and you shoot things as you're going, and you're trying to avoid all the zombies. But Konami for the Super Nintendo and the Sega Mega Drive or the Genesis in 1993. I never played it on the Genesis, even though I was a Genesis girl. I played on Super Nintendo. So 1 or 2 players will take control of the protagonists. Their names are Zeke and Julie. If you're a guy, Zeke, girl, Julie, obviously. In order to rescue their neighbors from monsters that are often seen in horror movies. Pretty much just, zombies and creepy guys with chains.
Yes, I hate those chainsaw guys. They're a pain in the butt.
I can't stand them.
No, I too played it on the SNES. I did it when growing up as well. I don't remember if I got this as like a launch title game or anything like that, but I do remember having it, owning it, playing it.
Right.
Back in those days, Nintendo Power and Game Pro were like the only things that had any coverage. It wasn't the internet, so who knows when games actually came out to be like, hey, I'm here to get it the day it comes out. It's like,
right.
You go to Toys R Us and you pick the little slips up and you go see the little person in the cage that hands you the game the way it used to be, and that's kind of how you knew when something was out. But I do remember playing it. I remember playing it with my cousins as well, quite a lot. So we had a lot of fun with it. But let's get into it. So class in session. Let's jump into the science. The basic story plot of the game, as you kind of mentioned here, the overhead game plot centers on a mad scientist by the name of Dr. Tongue, which, fun fact, is likely a reference to the very first zombie, Dr. Tongue, seen in Day of the Dead, the old school black and white first zombie movie. Story goes that Dr. Tongue has created all sorts of different monsters in his spooky underground laboratory, which have been unleashed on the populace. It's up to, as you mentioned, Zeke and Julie to save the day.
I didn't know that it was that was the name of the very first zombie. That's very cool. All right, so and when we get into the mechanics of everything, if you are playing as Zeke, who is the guy character, pretty much the male avatar, he's got 3D glasses, blonde hair, extremely 90s. Julie has got a red cap and a purple jacket, and I'm pretty sure it's plaid if I remember correctly. I don't know. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, extremely 90s grunge looking children. You had to go about 55 different environments, like a shopping mall, backyards. Just to be fair, guys, I don't really get past the backyards because it's really hard for me. Yeah, no. I mean, I've seen other stuff, but I suck at this game. And like, it just, even replaying it, I still just could not get very far. Haunted castles, beaches, all sorts of crazy scenarios that you're saving your neighbors. You guys are just everywhere. So you're battling monsters, you're collecting keys, weapons to kill them, and pretty much just you have to run and save like 10 people per stage. And you just run over them and collect them pretty much. And then you immediately get an exit door that pops up. allowing you to go to the next level.
Yeah, you're totally like, the neighbors are kind of everywhere, and you're right. It's kind of a little nerve wracking when you're doing like the hedge maze levels in the backyard.
The hedge maze levels walking around. Yeah,
it's a little baby, and the chainsaw guy's going after the baby. You're just like, this is horrible. But
yeah,
we'll get more to how that works later, because there's a little bit of story there as far as some censorship and what happened there. That'll make you feel a little bit better about the babies being attacked by a chainsaw maniac. But the cool thing about Zombies Ate My Neighbors is, despite what the title makes you believe, is that Dr. Tongue didn't have exclusively just zombies, if you've never played this game. So it does feature many different zombies, of course, but each level also included all sorts of other monsters. Things like, giant spiders. We mentioned the chainsaw guy, werewolves, vampires, haunted dolls, and even a giant mutant baby boss. Yeah. And the final boss himself was Dr. Tongue, who transformed into a giant spider, and then a floating head that could literally shoot out tongues out of his mouth. So yeah, it was a little bit weird. It was basically a hodgepodge of different creatures all in one game, much like the movie Cabin in the Woods, which featured all different type of horror things in there as well too. So it's very similar to that.
Yep. So in terms of how neighbors get killed in this game, they can be killed if any sort of enemy touches them. That prevents them from being saved for the remainder of the game, or until you get an extra bonus victim award. On some levels, the day usually turns into a nighttime scene. And once the night happens, then the tourists are transformed into werewolves, and you can't collect them anymore. So it kind of counts as like a kill for that person. So at least one neighbor has to be saved from each level in order to get on to the next one. But I think, like I said, there's 10 per level, and the game's lost if the players lose all their lives or if all of the neighbors are killed. Scoring points earns the players extra neighbors to save and extra lives. And each level has at most 10 neighbors. Each neighbor type is worth a different amount of points. I remember cheerleader girl jumping on trampoline is no. Cheerleader girl is not jumping on the trampoline, but because she's jumping up and down, she's like worth 100 or something, because you have to wait for her to, jump back down.
Yep. Yeah, it was the little girl who jumps on the trampoline. She's kind of a pain too. That's right. You jump on the trampoline, and if you're not in sync, you actually miss her.
Yeah.
So you kind of just go back and forth, and you're like, hello, I need to keep moving on. But as you mentioned earlier, there are various items you can pick up along the way, of course. These include the keys that will open up locked doors to get you into houses, which can have you search, cabinets or refrigerators for additional items or weapons. You can get health packs that, of course, restore your health. Potions with varying effects, such as increasing speed or turn you into like this purple monster thing that you could punch through walls with. As far as weapons, you have an Uzi, water gun, bazookas, which are not water guns, which is ironic that your main weapon is the water pistol, but then you can get a literal bazooka. Soda can grenades, popsicles, tomatoes, silverware, dishes. Of course, you need a crucifix if you're fighting a vampire, and then flamethrowers and fire extinguishers as well.
Yeah, flamethrowers are my favorite.
Yeah, and fun facts on the flamethrowers later too as well. Spoiler there. But yeah, each weapon had a different effectiveness against certain types of enemies. So like silverware was super effective against the werewolves because it's silver crucifix vampire. It all makes sense and ties in together. But yeah, so that's pretty much how the game itself works. Now let's jump in and talk a little bit about the history, the making of the game, and how all that came to be.
Okay, next period already. Making of the original game. Are we ready? Zombies Ate My Neighbors was originally developed by LucasArts, our favorite. It was published by Konami, who was already known for their platformers pretty much by 1993. The music for the game was composed by Joe McDermott. Game was developed on the Super Nintendo before it was ported to the Genesis, which was about halfway through. And ZAMN, or the ZAMN engine, would be later used for Ghoul Patrol, Metal Warriors, and Big Sky Trooper. The developers wanted to include battery saves in the game, but they could not afford it.
Yep, those times were tough back then. You had to use, so as you progress through the game, you'll actually get like completion codes saying like, hey, if you want to continue entering this code, you'll pick up from that level when you go back in. Now, as we mentioned before, the game, as a lot of games were in the 90s, subject to some censorships when coming overseas. So this game was released before the ESRB existed, so there really wasn't any limitations to what you could and could not do. But Nintendo back in that day was very strict about their rules, and they did not want violence in their video games. So Nintendo of America actually ordered that all depictions of blood and gore be removed and changed to purple ooze instead. Yeah. So they kind of all had the game and did their different tweaks to it. So censorship committees in much of Europe censored more by having the game renamed to just Zombies as opposed to Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I guess that's less gory when you think about it. But also other changes included replacement of the chainsaw-wielding enemies with lumberjacks that had axes instead. I don't think that's much of a difference. I guess it's maybe a little less scary because it's a lumberjack and not the hockey mask Jason guy with the chainsaw. But that's what they thought.
Everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. So the game, like you mentioned, was only on Sega Genesis, Master Drive, and Super Nintendo. Eventually, it was re-released back in October 2009 for the Wii Virtual Console, as did a lot of stuff there. Now, exactly. Now, when the game was originally released, it wasn't really a big success at all. It seemed to become a cult classic years afterwards, despite its review scores of above average. Like, it wasn't reviewed bad or anything like that. And game rankings currently has it at 84.5%, which is really high for a game back then.
Right.
And many of the highlights for many people was, it was a 2-player co-op game you could play at the same time, which there wasn't a ton of those, especially in this top-down shooter style.
Sure.
The humor in it was good. It was written, well. A lot of jokes and stuff going on there. As you said, the depictions of like the neighbors were very stereotypical. You had like the dad on the grill. You had the cheerleader, stuff like that. The tourists had like the Hawaiian shirts and the cameras and all that kind of stuff. The graphics were pretty darn good for SNES, especially.
Absolutely. I love the pixel art in this game.
Exactly. It's really good. And it still holds up. I streamed some of it. You can check it out on the YouTube and see. I did like an hour, half hour of it or so. And the music was actually really good in this game as well, too. Yeah, I mean, it was typical of the 90s where it gets repetitive each stage, and as you play through, you can actually memorize basically the whole song and how it's going to go. Yeah. But it was catchy. It wasn't in a bad way where you're like, oh my God, I can't stand the song again. It just, it fit the tone well.
Yep. Speaking of how it was received and reviews and stuff, Mike Sabler of Sega16.com says that the variety of weapons shows off the game's, quote, tongue-in-cheek nature by giving you weapons and items like silverware dishes, soda can grenades, weed whacker, keys, bazooka, as well as health packs. The Armchair Empire has similarly praised the game. There were variety and strategy that the weapon system incorporated. It's almost kind of like what we have with Splatoon now.
Very true.
Yeah. I don't think we have soda can grenades yet.
No.
that would be pretty
Wouldn't be
cool,
surprised.
Full circle, 90s weapons in a Splatoon game for a 90s style game versus a 90s game with weapons. Anyway, sorry. They also made note of little details that make it so cool to play, saying if you come across a door which you don't have a key for, you can blow it open with a bazooka, which is pretty fun, I will have to say. Critics agreed that co-op mode is highly recommended, which is pretty big deal. Yeah, like, I mean, I can't remember any games way back in the 90s that we insisted on playing co-op,
Yeah, right.
It was pretty much just, 2-player mode sucked in comparison. So as we talked about the graphics and stuff, the graphics are very colorful and detailed, and they've also been praised as well as the soundtrack, which Sabler called an homage to the spooky, over-the-top music found in old scary flicks, which is pretty fun. He went on to mention that the sound effects are equally impressive. Corby Dillard of NintendoLife.com says that the graphics do not exactly set new 16-bit standards, but they still manage to look sharp, and the creative use of the darker color scheme used throughout the entire game makes the creepy visuals come to life on the screen. Dillard also ended his review by calling the game a second-rate horror movie version of Contra, which I guess I can see that too.
Yeah, it makes sense, and something that we didn't really mention too, as he said, the sound effects are impressive. This was one of those games that had rare actual voices.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they're obviously really short. They're like, ow, or hey, and stuff like that. But you didn't see that a lot in those days. So it was pretty cool to see that. And it's something I kind of forgot about till I just read through that myself and saw, oh yeah, that's right. That there is technically voice acting in this game back, from that day.
It was probably like the largest file on there.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, my favorite period. Ready? Free period. Cheats and fun facts. My favorite. There was a sequel for this game. It was called Ghoul Patrol. Like we mentioned before, the same engine was used. It was released in 1994, but it was not as well received as Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It was not intended to be released as a sequel, but it was reworked to create an increase in sales because they, I guess, decided that it was selling well, and they decided, hey, let's make a sequel. In 1997, LucasArts also released a game for Sony's PlayStation and the Sega Saturn titled Herc's Adventures, which I have actually played that game before.
Oh yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's kind of cartoony and just, you know, like I'll have to show you pictures or something later, but oddly enough, that came out the same year as Disney's Hercules, so it's not at all in the same. It's not the same as Hercules for the Disney movie. But anyway, that uses the same kind of basic gameplay and format mechanics as Zombies Ate My Neighbors. But yeah, I played it on PlayStation. It's really fun. It parodies Greek mythology, which pretty much everything this day does, because it's been done time and time again. Day of the Tentacle. Are you paying attention, Japan? Another game developed by LucasArts is referenced in Zombies Ate My Neighbors through a secret level.
It's true. And so like this game has numerous different secret levels. You have to do certain things to unlock, whether it be catch all the neighbors in a certain area, you can unlock the world, or do certain objectives, get a weapon, blow up a certain wall, whatever the case is. But that secret level that references Day of the Tentacle is actually a stage set in LucasArts Studios. Okay, and there is a character in there that suspiciously looks like George Lucas.
Oh, I've never played Day of the Tentacle, and I'm kind of afraid to learn what it's about.
Day of the Tentacle is the sequel to Maniac Mansion.
Oh, okay.
So it's nothing weird, Japan, as you were inferring prior, but yes, because the tentacles are the monsters in Maniac Mansion, and the sequel is called Day of the Tentacle, which was remastered later on for PS3. I don't know if it ever came to PS4, but it hit PS3 and Xbox 360 at least, remastered from its original release back in the day. But
McFang or something?
What was that?
Like a Cthulhu type thing, or is it just...
No, it's literally just a tentacle that has, you know, the Octoling suction cups on it, and then it has hands, and it's just its own character.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Anyway, so as of 2011, last time we really heard anything about Zombies Ate My Neighbors other than the Wii re-release, was there was actually a film in development. It was being penned and produced by screenwriter John Darko, who is known for his work on Insidious and Archetype. Stories reported to be by unknown writer Mervyn Louis. At the time of the report, they were securing the rights from LucasArts and obtaining a director as well as financing for the film. Now, nothing's been heard of since. However, I could totally see a Shaun of the Dead-like movie coming out in this vein. Like, right? Like, I could totally see this working as that type of movie. Obviously not a serious horror movie because the game's not a serious horror game, but I could totally see it happening and being pretty fun. John
Darko is pretty good. So yeah, I think it would be an interesting take. I'm not exactly sure if I would like it. What can you do with this game, though? Like, all of our neighbors are in danger, or we got to go collect them.
Essentially, think about it. That's what Shaun of the Dead was. He was collecting all of his neighbors. I mean, you could do literally the same thing, and just change it to two teenage kids rescuing these like it would just be like Scary Movie, or be like a parody of a horror movie, I think. But yeah, it could work that way. It'd be fun. Yeah. So let's talk a little about our personal impressions and opinions. We both mentioned we played this way back in the day. So your overall thoughts on the series from when you played it. What do you think of it? Your reactions at the time, maybe your reactions now since you revisited it a little bit. What you thinking?
Well, when I played this game, I was not allowed to own it because it was too scary. And I played it over at friends' houses or cousins' houses. Like I said, this came out. It came into my view probably about 97, 98, around there. Like somebody had it, and I would go over and play it at their house. I honestly don't remember who it was, but I asked for it, and I was like, "No, it's zombies. This is bad. You're not allowed to do it." So it was kind of like a taboo game for me, and I really enjoyed it. You know, it was colorful, and I liked it, and it was kind of scary for me at the time. I always get freaked out by being chased by stuff in video games. So any sort of thing where you have to avoid things and not get hit at all is kind of anxiety ridden for me. And I guess that carries over to today. like I said, I did get it for the Virtual Console when it came out in the Wii. It was one of the several games that I got. And I remember playing it a little bit back then, but that's been almost 10 years ago too. And I don't exactly remember. I was just like, oh, I'm getting this for nostalgia's sake because I was never able to own the cart. And then I played it like a few weeks ago now when we were talking about it. And I was like, oh yeah, it's Halloween. I got to start playing. And God, I suck at this game. I'm not good at it. I think it's because I get so nervous and I'm just like, okay, I got to go over here. And I just need to, if I played it with save states, that would be freaking fantastic. Like if I was able to play it with save state, I would learn from the mistake, reset to the save state and stuff. But because I didn't do it that way, I just kept dying. So yeah, I've never actually beaten the game. I've never gotten to I've seen the ending. I've seen like Dr. Tongue and all the craziness that ensues from that. But I've never actually beaten it myself.
See, I have beaten it. So I played it a lot as a kid with, like I said, my cousins. One was older than me, one was younger than me. And we played through it a lot together. But the ironic thing is I could never beat it when playing 2-player. I always did much better on my own because the key in this game, at least in my mind, is as much as you want to, and the anxiety in you to say, I need to rescue every single person. If you just don't, you're better off because all you have to do is save one person and you can move forward.
No, see, I'm like, I've got to get everybody.
Right. And that's the way I do it too. And when I revisited the game too, I was doing the same thing. I was like, I need to collect every person. But then as you go through the stages, you're like, okay, if I try and rescue every person, I start doing reckless, stupid things. And that's when I get killed. So it's like, you have to proceed with caution and kind of work your way through, make sure you're monitoring, your inventory, which is sometimes it's hard because the way you cycle through your weapons and the way you cycle through your items are two different button combinations. And then using those are two different button combinations. You may want to use a health pack and instead you shoot off your rocket launcher or vice versa. So there's a lot of that can happen there too, but I'm with you. It is a hard game, but I was able to beat it back in the day solo. I didn't play it long enough again when revisiting it for the show to really dig in and see if I could beat it again. I'm guessing probably not because I can't seem to be able to beat a lot of these games I could back then. Now I'm getting too old. Mario's I can still do, but a lot of these other ones are just harder now. I don't know what it is.
Right. I think watching a speed run of this would just make me sick.
Oh yeah. Especially if they actually save everybody. If they do like a perfect speed run.
Oh shoot.
That'd be crazy in this game. Bad. We'll have to look that up now.
Yeah.
So the future here. Now, could you see in this day and age where we're seeing tons of retro art style games, could you see a sequel or like a reimagining of this type of game come back? Because I personally can. I could totally see this still working, this formula still working today. Just update, the graphics. Maybe not even update them that much. You can still do it in 16-bit, but new soundtrack, new levels, new story, new pixels for the the enemies. Don't use the same stuff because that would just be lame. But I could totally see them come back and doing something like this, playing this on the Switch. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, like the fact that we had Thimbleweed Park, which was a revitalization of the point and clicks from LucasArts. I think that if that group got together and did the exact same thing for this kind of game, that would be amazing. I think that would be great. Just like a spiritual successor. I don't think you need really like Zombies Ate My Neighbors 2. I think
no. Call it something else.
Some sort of spiritual successor and make up a whole different, but still the run and gun saving type thing. I think that could be done.
I'm going to tweet them because I have a couple people that we've kind of made friends with over from Thimbleweed Park and just be like, hey, any chance we can get you guys to think about doing something like this? Because that's a great point. I mean, they did such an amazing job with Thimbleweed Park and keeping that same spirit, but just making it better. If they could do it, it'd be awesome. That kind of pixel work that they did in that game would just be fine for this kind of thing. Yeah, and they definitely have the humor and stuff for it, so that works. Yeah. But overall, check it out. Zombies Ate My Neighbors, originally on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System and the Sega Genesis. Like I said, you can head over to the YouTube and see some gameplay streaming I did just to kind of get a idea of what we're talking about if you can't picture in your head, or if you've never seen the game before, it's definitely one worth checking out. I think if you're a retro collector, I would deem it as a must-have in your collection if you have a Super Nintendo that works, especially if you have somebody else to play with, because even if it's harder in my mind to win that way, I had a whole lot more fun playing with somebody else. For sure. So check it out, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Now, this time we threw a curveball, Caro, and I told you we were doing 2 games. Right. Now, the second game, when I first mentioned it, you had a blank expression on your face because you're like, say what now? The who's it, what's it, the Spike who's it? It's the game.
Again, I was like, what's the name of this thing so I can download an emulator?
Yep, and I had to find you the ROM because you couldn't even locate a ROM for it.
Right.
Not that we endorse pirating, but there's literally no way to play this game because it's that rare. It is the Twisted Tales of Spike McFang. Now, this game, I told you, a couple of days ago, I think we were talking about this. I had forgotten completely about this game. And going into last episode of Arcadia, we don't talk about what we're going to pitch for the next episode to each other until that episode.
Right.
I didn't even have this in my head until I said Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I'm like, there was something else Halloween themed back then that I loved.
Looking for it that's so funny.
Yeah, so and it is this game. So we're not going to do a full, 3 classes like we just did with Zombies Ate My Neighbors, but we do want to talk about this game because it was the first time you ever played to it. So we're going to kind of talk more about our impressions.
Right.
I'm going to tell you guys about the game if you're not familiar with it, which I would be shocked if anybody else knew this game because I don't know how I didn't remember it for years, but all of a sudden it came back to me and I'm like, I remember this game. So yeah, it is, as I mentioned, the Twisted Tales of Spike McFang. The game follows the adventures of a young vampire, title character Spike McFang, who is set to battle with the evil zombie general Von Hessler, who attempts to invade his parents and his friend Camilla's kingdoms. The game is another top-down perspective. You can encounter several enemies in the games, and by defeating them, you can get experience points to increase your level. So it's kind of like an RPG upgrade system. Spike's main weapons are his cape, that attacks short range. So think like similar to like a punch and kick, except he uses his cape. Spike can extend the range of this by dizzying himself as he goes into like a whirlwind mode. And his hat, which can be thrown like a boomerang, and he wears like this little top hat type thing. He's also able to utilize magical cards in a system with a variety of special effects, which include invisibility. You can summon angels and bats to fight with you. You can turn all your foes into little bunny rabbits and stuff. You can grab a balloon and escape to safety. You have element attacks. Yeah. You can power up your partners. You can recover health, of course, there too. So it was a weird mix of an upgrade RPG, top-down action game with almost a card battling system, which back then there was no games that did that at all.
When I saw that there were cards, I was like, what? Like we can actually but it's just pretty much just like an item use thing. Like you use a card as an elemental attack, and then once you've exhausted it. So it's a good idea for you to stock up on all of those kinds of cards. Yeah.
Now, and the weird thing is, so we talk about the way games change when coming from Japan to the U.S. Now, this game is actually a sequel to a game that was released only in Japan. So it was kind of weird that we got it in the first place at all. Now, the American release of this game, the enemies have higher defense, and after Spike gains a level, his health doesn't replenish. So in most games, when you level up, they give you a refill of all your stats. Doesn't happen in the U.S. one. So this game was actually harder in the U.S. than it was in Japan, which never really happens.
It's a miracle I beat it.
Yep.
The defense on monsters was pretty difficult in places.
Totally. And the only other censoring that we see is, Japan can be a little pervy at times. So the shopkeeper was originally a pretty blonde girl. In the American version, they kind of turned him into a mummy. So
yeah.
So the the game actually received good reviews. So it's weird that not a lot of people know this game or remember this game at all.
When did it come out? Because I feel like if it came out at the end of the Super Nintendo's lifetime, especially for a localization, that's why.
It was 1994 in the U.S. It released in Japan in 93.
Really?
Yep.
I was thinking if it was like 96, 97, that would make sense.
Nope. So yeah, EGM magazine, if you remember that, Electronic Gaming Monthly back in the day, called it a huge adventure game in the same vein as like Zelda, Link to the Past. It was like that kind of style, just the characters a little bit bigger, of course. But you can have additional members in your party, which you couldn't do in Zelda.
Right.
Their 5 reviewers gave the game a 41 out of 50, which is pretty high, which basically averages to 8.2 out of 10 on the scale. Nintendo Power praised the game for good graphics, entertaining story. GamePro gave the game a negative review, which if you remember game reviews from back then, GamePro was always the one to score things way lower than everybody else ever did.
I don't even remember them really.
Yeah, GamePro used to have this weird scale where they'd break down every game into like sound, graphics, fun, controls, and something else. There were 5 different scores they would give a game, and then combined it would give a number. And it was always something stupid where like, this game graphics is amazing, but the music is bad. And then the controls are weird. So it's this weird score where I was like, okay, you ended up with like a 60, but you're saying the game was great.
Sound is subjective. So
exactly. So and fun was a a 0 to 5 on the scale, which is like fun is completely
absolutely subjective
up to that person. So it made no sense. Yeah. But anyway, I remember this game, like I said, really, really vaguely. And I don't know how it came back to me, but when we were talking, getting ready for this episode, I was like, this art style, this kind of chibi, very Japanese game. I was like, it's cutesy.
Really anime style, extremely. Like for the portraits and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is the perfect game for you. And that's why I encourage you, like, hey, we need to cover this because I really want you to play this game that nobody knows and experience it. So talk about, I mean, I haven't gone back to play it yet. I watched some video. I will play it again before this episode actually drops. So I will stream some of it so people can see. But tell me about your experience, what you thought about this game overall.
If I ever have somebody call me on a cell phone and tell me every single time you gained a level, I will pull my hair out, because that's what happens in this. That's what happens in this game. So you gain a level, you're fighting a monster. It will interrupt anything you're doing as soon as you hit that experience point, and your professor or whatever calls you. Is like, "Hey, Spike, just letting you know you gained a level." It's like, fantastic. Let me continue doing what I'm doing at every single level. That's the only qualm I had with the game. It is very short. Yeah. There's only about 4 different levels, so to speak, or 4 different areas. There's your castle that Spike lives in with his parents. I think you go to the desert after that. Then you go to... No, there was somewhere else between then. Anyway, there's an ice level, and then there's a jungle level towards the end. And like, there's only maybe 4 main bosses in the game with some mini bosses sprinkled throughout. And it's just, it's just a cute little game. It took me about maybe 4 or 5 hours to beat it. So it's not like a big thing. If you're looking to spend an afternoon playing a game, you can totally beat this game in that time. I was actually finding myself grinding in a couple of places just because some of the enemies that I was coming up on were a little bit too difficult in certain areas. They don't give you quite a good lead. They're like, so-and-so is a level 7 boss. It's like, okay, great. And then you go into the next one. It's like, so-and-so is a level 11. It's like, okay, but you haven't given me all these other ones to between. So I had to go back and grind before I would go to the next level. And the humor in this game is hilarious.
Yes.
Spike is they're all kids essentially, but they're so deadpan. Like, I think one of the parts that I just laughed out loud at was oh my God, I can't remember, but they're like, Spike, I believe in you or whatever, and he just says, me too.
Yeah.
like that's something that a kid would say, like, it's just like, me too. But I mean, it's just hilarious little quips and stuff that I'm glad that, I don't know if that was originally in the Japanese or if when they localized it, they're like, let's make this kid a sarcastic little,
It could be, yeah.
I mean, and like Camellia or whatever her name is, the green-haired girl, she's actually very sassy too.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Rudy, the purple-haired kid that's actually Von Hels, what's his name?
Hessler.
Von Hessler's son. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, my dad's been taken over by some sort of spirit. He would never do this and stuff. Anyway, he's the first one you meet on your journey. And then Camellia like comes back. She'd gotten sick, and you have to like get some water to help her and bring her back. And so y'all leave. You leave Rudy behind. Rudy wakes up and he's like, what the heck? And so there's literally like a cutscene where Rudy is chasing the vehicle off into the next area. It's so funny, stuff like that. But I really enjoyed it. I really did. It sucks because I kind of wanted this game physical now that I've played it. And, yeah, it's not going to happen because if you go on eBay, you'll see why. I will say that I think probably one of my favorite things that it's got to be an homage is there are these monsters called python bunnies, and they're literally bunnies that attack you, Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's got to be an homage to Monty Python.
Oh, it is.
Girls Bunny. Yeah. Yep. Okay. I was just making sure because there's a bunch of cute, like, you fight little garlic cloves, like that's It's just like vampire versus what would be bad to a vampire. Type. Super cute though. But yeah, I'll shut up about it. I've played it all the way through, and I think it's great.
No, it really is, really. So, like, to give people some context, like, to get a physical copy right now on eBay, you can get a copy brand new, sealed, for $700.
Oh, Jesus.
And that's the lowest price for a new one.
Yeah.
Pre-owned, you're looking at about $100 to get a version of this game. No manual, no box, just the card only kind of deal.
And I'm a stickler for is it authentic, and is the sticker on the label good?
Right, so exactly. Those are things you want to look for sure. Yeah, but yeah, the game is apparently so hard. If you get a card at all, regardless of condition, and you're like a completist, grab it if you can get a good deal. You walk into a yard sale and find this thing, man. You could flip it for a pretty penny, guaranteed.
And the graphics is great. Like, I mean, it's really good for like really good 16-bit graphics.
Yeah, no, it totally is. So funny thing while you were talking, I was kind of looking up about how GamePro would rate things. So it was graphics and sound was one metric. Play control was one metric. So those are okay. I could see how they're semi-subjective, but they can be legitimate, you know. Right. But then challenge was one. How hard is the game? Which that also can be entirely subjective for people. Like Jason destroys these games that I can never get through.
I know, right?
You know. And then theme and fun. So, yeah. Theme and fun.
Who cares?
Exactly. It's like if you like the game, you like the game. And the theme in some games is not important at all. Like, so that is what it is. But that's why GamePro isn't around anymore, boys and girls. But yeah, Twisted Tales, Spiking McFang. Definitely check it out if you're interested. If you're a gaming historian like we are, at least watch like a playthrough or something on YouTube. Like I said, I'm going to try and post some of it so you guys can see it. Not very common at all, but it is a hidden gem, I will say. I enjoyed the game thoroughly. I remember playing it. I don't remember when I got it. I don't remember all that kind of stuff, but I do thoroughly remember the game, like the soup cards. The card mechanic is what hooked me on the game. Made it very different from anything else during that genre. Period.
Another thing that I just found hysterical was that your health is measured by tomato. So, like, instead of blood or anything you would think would be a vampire thing, it's tomato juice. So, like, you have to get tomato juice cards to up your health.
Yep. And I couldn't find if it was different in Japan or not. It might have been, and that could have been some censorship, but it doesn't. I don't see anything a lot of the censorship except for what I mentioned in there. So I'm guessing no. And I think it was meant to be kind of tongue in cheek and kind of cutesy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're fighting a couple little cloves of garlic, of course, so you're going to be tomato blood. That's
true. That's fair enough. So yeah, I think that's it. I definitely check it out. Like I said, if you can get your hands on a copy of it, it's definitely worth a playthrough if you're a 16-bit gaming freak like we are. Definitely check it out. It's a fun time. But that wraps up the topics we want to talk about for this evening as far as games here. But before that bell rings, we do need to know about our homework and what we need to prepare for next class, Caro. It's your turn. So what are we going to talk about?
I was teasing you earlier today. Yes. I was like, we're going to do 4. We're going to do 4. Originally, it was going to be 3, but then I thought of another one, and I was like, we have to do 4. It's football season. I really enjoy football games. I am going to throw this out here right now. Coach Mo, I would love if you would join us for this next Arcadia Academia. Please join us. We are going to talk about and compare some old football classics, including 10-Yard Fight, which was made for the arcade and the Nintendo Entertainment System back in 1983. Tecmo Bowl, arcade, Nintendo, and the Game Boy in 1987. My personal favorite, Super High Impact Football for the arcade and the Genesis in 1991. And Coach's favorite, Madden NFL 94 for the Genesis and the Super Nintendo in 1994. So I feel like those are 4 humongous arcade / early staples, early console staple football games that we should probably talk about.
Totally, I'm down for that. I remember all of these except for Super High Impact Football. I don't recall that one at all, so I'm gonna have to look that one up and see what I can do there.
It's definitely better than the Genesis version. However, I originally played it on the Genesis. It was my very first football game, so I think I kind of see with rose-tinted glasses just because it was my first. And
sure,
I love all that's in it. So I can't wait. It's football.
All righty.
We're not talking soccer, by the way. We're talking American football.
America. So yeah, I think it's kind of safe to say there probably won't be a whole lot of talk around the history of development of these games, but who knows? Maybe we'll find some tidbits here. But it's going to be more of a debate and lesson in football throughout the times.
I would like to call this PE class because we're gonna have a competition against each other, and we're talking about a sports game, or sports games.
Fair enough. So that wraps up this episode of Arcadia Academia. As always, we remind you to check out the website at psvg.blog and check out all the different things we do over there. We are part of the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network and part of the Make Us Better group on patreon.com/makeusbetter. Caro, where can people find you and what else you do?
Twitter, Twitch, and that's about it right now. And of course on the Discord, I am the Nintendame if you're looking for me there. I stream daily and also a little bit on the weekends. Unfortunately, I did not get to stream any of this. I did play Spike McFang, so I played it at night when I was done doing my regular streams. But yeah, I might pop in some football ROMs just to see what the nitty gritty is on the retro side of Twitch this time around.
There you go. Well, you can play Tecmo Bowl. That's in that NES Online thing.
That's true too. I forgot about that.
So we can play each other.
Oh,
we
yeah.
should do that. We should do that. I'm terrible at it. I lost to Donnie in the first round of the tournament. So
I suck at Tecmo Bowl.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's plan on that. And of course, you can find Caroline most weeks, except for this last one on the Nintendo Shack as well.
Nintendo Shack, yeah, of course.
So make sure you subscribe to that. If you don't subscribe to the PSVG Master feed and you want to subscribe to that individually, feel free to do so. You can find me most weeks as well, hosting the PSVG, the flagship PSVG Prime, as Donnie calls it now. And you can follow me on Twitter at PSVG Kevin. But that, boys and girls, wraps up the day. The final bell has rung, and you have been schooled.